guys, this is Andrew with High Level Reviews, and today I'd like to take a look at Terranigma. The game was developed by Quintet and published by Enix and was released in Japan for the Super NES in 1995, and eventually in PAL territories in 1996. Sadly, it never made it to the States due to Enix of America closing before they could bring it over. It is the third entry in the Blazer series, with the two previous titles being Soul Blazer and Illusion of Gaia. While it certainly borrows many aspects of the previous Quintet games, it also contains many original themes and gameplay elements, and often tackles very dark and tragic subjects in poignant and often devastating ways. While it doesn't enjoy the same prestige of Chrono Trigger and the other powerhouse RPGs on the SNES, it has nonetheless gained a very loyal and attached following. The game takes place on a post-apocalyptic Earth and focuses on Ark, a mischievous boy in the last remaining human village called Krista. After Argo's tired of tossing pots and other objects around the village into walls, he decides to toss one at a door that the elder of the town has declared off limits. He breaks the door open and finds a box with a benevolent demon named Yomi inside. After touching the box and returning to town, every citizen has been frozen. The elder, the only other citizen not affected by this, suspiciously enough, approaches Ark and tells him that in order to unfreeze the inhabitants, he needs to unlock the continents on the surface by defeating 5 towers in the underworld. After reviving the continents, the elder informs him that he must travel to the surface and resurrect all living beings. But doing so will make returning to Krista, and thus his closest friend and potential love interest Ellie, impossible until his task is complete. The rest of the game is spent reviving various parts of Earth's ecosystem, from birds to the wind to plants and eventually mankind. Ark also aids in pushing humankind's technological advancements along and, in the process, is able to see visual representations of these progressions in the form of architectural advancements in towns you visited and helped. Terranigma contains a surprising amount of late-game twists that never feel forced or poorly executed. It is a story of life and death and resurrection, and this theme is maintained and reinforced throughout. I know it might sound like hyperbole, but I must add that this title contains some of the more emotionally jarring scenes I can recall in a video game. Though it is hard to avoid sanctimony when so many religious and metaphysical themes are featured so prominently, Terranigma avoids self-righteousness by not force-feeding a ton of narrative down your throat and allows the player time to pick up on the details as the game progresses. While there is a mid-game lull and some occasional difficulty determining how to move forward with the plot, it was never enough to detract from my enjoyment of the story. Though I hear a lot of criticism of older JRPGs that focus on convoluted plots and the shoehorning in of what some feel to be unnecessarily complex and awkward references to religious and psychological concepts, Terranigma's tale felt skillfully introduced and played out more like a Greek tragedy focusing on the hero's journey than a preachy stance on environmentalism or moral conduct. Though I might have games I favor higher in terms of the overall delivery, and this is purely preference, the writers of Terranigma wrote some of the best and most tragic moments I can recall. From a goat that offers you her husband's carcass to eat, to a poor girl who can't cope with the bleakness of death and separation, this game is surely to hit you like no other. Terranigma is played from a top-down perspective, and utilizes an action real-time fighting system. Ark can perform 6 easy-to-execute techniques that all serve different purposes, usually depending on monster type, but that are still useful in most situations, which actually make adopting your own attack style very easy and opens up different strategies for defeating harder monsters and bosses. Admittedly, some types have very specific weaknesses, but all of the moves, as mentioned before, are user-friendly, and exploiting the monster's shortcomings isn't difficult, because the controls in Terranigma are incredibly responsive. No clunkiness, rarely do you get stuck in animations for longer than anticipated, and the more precise sections, such as tight roping over massive holes in the ground, aren't made difficult whatsoever by clumsy controls. Unlike in other Quintet titles, every monster rewards experience, and gaining a level bestows noticeable power spikes. If you're struggling in an area, simply gaining a level might alleviate your struggles. Rarely did I find myself needing to grind, and this was due in large part to respawning monsters and a fairly steady difficulty curve. Even so, I enjoyed the fast-paced combat so much that it wasn't an annoyance when I did need to grind for experience or gold. Another fun change from the two previous titles is the ability to pick up gold from deceased monsters, and to then purchase equipment, restorative items, and magic from shops. In prior titles, the items you acquired were either gifts or found in the wild, and while you can still stumble upon hidden items, it's nice to have a reliable way of acquiring much needed supplies. While the magic was certainly visually pleasing and very powerful, I never found myself in desperate need of it outside of one particular battle. The normal combat is so rewarding and so frenetic that breaking up that action felt cumbersome and much less rewarding. You acquire spells by locating Magirocks in the world, and use those when you visit magic shops to purchase the spells. As you progress in the game, stronger spells are unlocked, and after using a spell, the Magirocks are returned to your inventory and you're able to purchase more, thus limiting how much magic you can carry at one time. It's a smart way to gate power, as gold becomes plentiful as the game advances, but it also dissuades the player from wanting to fool around with it too often for fear of running out of the more potent spells. After playing a fair amount of action RPGs, it seems that magic use is the hardest thing to balance while still keeping it fun and engaging. Terranigma was close, but it just wasn't as useful or as fun when compared to the normal combat, and I ended up almost entirely abandoning it. Of course, where Terranigma truly distinguishes itself from other titles and falls in line with previous Quintet games while still creatively diverging, is the act of literal world building. As you accomplish certain goals, you begin to unlock land masses and towns and animals and help civilizations to advance culturally and technologically. You are creating Earth from the ground up and seeing the changes you've enacted right in front of you and even reaping the rewards, and sometimes lamenting the consequences, of those alterations. The system really beautifully merges with the story and works together with it to create an even more moving and at times heartbreaking epic. While I previously praised Secret of Evermore for the variance of locales and settings, Terranigma does an even better job of not only ushering you to very different locations, but of also giving each location a very different feel and style. The backdrops are all pretty impressive, and the bosses are, while also being fun to fight, just as awe-inspiring. Though there are a few cases of reused random citizen sprites, it's nothing too egregious, and the primary characters all felt distinguished and wonderfully crafted. According to a lot of collectors' sites, Terranigma's soundtrack is one of the most sought after, and 10 minutes in this game will demonstrate just why that is. This is one of the best soundtracks made in the 16-bit era, and each track was carefully constructed to perfectly capture a specific mood, event, or place. It was paramount that they moved the player with the composition and found ways to augment the emotional pull of some of the major moments in the game with the music. The bitter moments felt even more hopeless and sorrowful, while the instances of personal success and glory felt that much more grand. This is a prime example of what stellar tracks can do for an already superb visual and narrative experience. Simply put, Terranigma blew me away. It is gorgeous, heart-rending, an allegory for human achievement and simultaneously of human folly. It has memorable and lovable characters. It also has detestable miscreants. Not to mention a top-notch soundtrack and an insanely addictive and quick-paced fighting system. Find a way to play this game and do it immediately. You will not regret it. If you enjoyed the review, don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment. My Twitter is also located right below the video. This has been Andrew with High Level Reviews, and I appreciate you guys stopping by.